The Epstein evidence the public was never meant to see. Behind sealed court documents, redacted flight log, and confidential settlements lies a story that powerful forces tried desperately to keep hidden. For decades, a network of influence, money, and silence protected secrets that would eventually shock the world. Today, we examine the evidence that was never meant to reach the public eye, the documents that were fought over in court, the testimonies that were sealed for years, the names that appeared in places they shouldn't have been. This is not speculation. This is documented fact. Stay with us as we uncover the truth that changed everything. And tell us in the comments, what part of this case disturbs you the most? The empire built in shadows. Manhattan, 1980s. The glittering financial district where fortunes are made and lost in seconds. Among the towering skyscrapers and power lunches at exclusive restaurants, a name begins to circulate in the highest circles. Jeffrey Epstein, a man without the traditional credentials. No MBA from Harvard. No documented track record of successful trades. Yet somehow, he manages to enter the inner sanctum of American wealth. His townhouse on East 71st Street becomes legendary. 7 stories of opulence in the heart of Manhattan's Upper East Side. Visitors describe Baroque paintings, a chess-themed bathroom, a life-size female doll hanging from a chandelier. But the most disturbing detail? A massive oil painting depicting a prison scene. Art that would later seem prophetic. Epstein claims to manage money only for billionaires. He tells people his minimum investment is $1 billion. $1 billion. A figure so astronomical it discourages questions. After all, who would dare ask for proof when the entry price is beyond the reach of almost everyone on Earth? He flies on private jets. He owns a ranch in New Mexico. He acquires an entire island in the United States Virgin Islands. Little St. James. Locals will later call it something else. Something far more sinister. The island becomes his private kingdom. 72 acres of beaches, palm trees, and buildings whose purposes remain mysterious to outsiders. But how did he acquire this wealth? Financial experts who later examine his business model find inconsistencies, gaps in documentation, clients who cannot be verified. The mystery deepens when it's discovered that his only publicly known client is Leslie Wexner, the billionaire founder of Victoria's Secret and The Limited. Wexner gives Epstein something extraordinary: power of attorney over his finances, complete control. It's an arrangement that baffles financial professionals. Why would a self-made billionaire hand over total control to someone with such a thin resume? In New York's social scene, Epstein becomes known for hosting dinner parties attended by scientists, academics, and the wealthy elite. He presents himself as a patron of knowledge, a modern-day Medici. He donates to universities. His name appears on buildings and programs at institutions like Harvard. But there's another side to his life, one that exists in the shadows of his Manhattan mansion and his Caribbean island. Young women are seen coming and going. Very young women. Some arriving with backpacks, as if coming from school. Neighbors notice but say nothing. Employees see things but sign non-disclosure agreements. Silence becomes currency in Epstein's world. In Palm Beach, Florida, he maintains another residence, a waterfront mansion where similar patterns emerge. Private schoolgirls are recruited. They're told they can make money giving massages to a wealthy man. What begins as something that seems legitimate quickly becomes something else entirely. The first cracks in the facade appear in 2005 when a mother in Palm Beach contacts police. Her 14-year-old daughter has come home with $300. When pressed about where the money came from, the girl reveals a disturbing story. She was taken to a mansion. She was told to massage a man. Things happen that should never happen to a child. Palm Beach Police Detective Joseph Carey begins an investigation. What he uncovers horrifies him. Victim after victim. A systematic pattern of abuse. Girls recruited from working-class families. Offered money they desperately need. Then exploited in ways that will traumatize them for life. Carey identifies at least 40 potential victims. Some as young as 13. The evidence is overwhelming. Phone records, witness statements, physical evidence from the mansion. This should be a straightforward prosecution. But nothing about the Epstein case will ever be straightforward. the documents that remained hidden. The investigation in Palm Beach should have led to justice. Detective Reed Carey and the Palm Beach Police Department believe they have an airtight case. They present their findings to the state prosecutor. The evidence fills multiple banker boxes, victim testimonies, flight logs, photographs, everything needed for a conviction that could put Epstein away for life. But then something extraordinary happens. The case is taken over by federal prosecutors. The United States Attorney for the Southern District of Florida is Alexander Acosta. What follows becomes one of the most controversial prosecutorial decisions in American legal history. Behind closed doors, negotiations begin. Epstein's legal team is formidable. Alan Dershowitz, a Harvard Law professor known for defending high-profile clients. Ken Starr, the former independent counsel who investigated President Bill Clinton. Jay Lefkowitz, a partner at a powerful New York law firm. These are not ordinary defense attorneys. These are men with connections that reach into the highest levels of government and society. The negotiations produce an agreement that shocks even seasoned legal observers. Epstein will plead guilty to 2 state charges: solicitation of prostitution, procuring a minor for prostitution. In exchange, he receives 18 months in county jail, not federal prison, county jail, and he's allowed work release for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. But the most disturbing part of the agreement is what's hidden in its language. The deal grants immunity not just to Epstein, but to any potential co-conspirators, named and unnamed. This means that anyone who helped him, anyone who participated, anyone who knew, is protected from federal prosecution. The victims are never told about this agreement. It's negotiated and signed without their knowledge. This violates the Crime Victims' Rights Act, a fact that a federal judge will later confirm. But by then, the damage is done. Epstein serves 13 months. During his incarceration, he spends most of his time at his office in West Palm Beach, not in his cell. He's allowed visitors. He continues to conduct business. This is not punishment. This is barely an inconvenience. Years pass. The case seems closed. But the victims don't forget. They grow from traumatized teenagers into determined women. They find lawyers willing to fight. Bradley Edwards and Paul Castle take on their case. These attorneys begin a legal battle that will last over a decade. Civil lawsuits are filed. Epstein settles them quietly, always with non-disclosure agreements. Silence is purchased over and over again. The amount are never made public, but sources suggest millions of dollars change hands to keep victims from speaking. Then, in 2015, something breaks open. A defamation lawsuit filed by Virginia Roberts Giuffre against Ghislaine Maxwell produces a treasure trove of documents, depositions, emails, flight logs, names. So many names. Ghislaine Maxwell, the daughter of disgraced British media mogul Robert Maxwell. Elegant, well-connected, she's described by victims as Epstein's right hand. More than that, his accomplice, his procurer, the one who approached young girls at Mar-a-Lago at schools at public spaces and brought them into Epstein's web. The court documents reveal a methodology. Girls were recruited with promises of modeling opportunities or educational assistance. They were groomed gradually, introduced to massage tables, told that touching was therapeutic, then asked to remove their clothes, then told that wealthy men have special needs. Each step designed to normalize what was fundamentally criminal. The documents also reveal something else. Flight logs from Epstein's private jets, multiple aircraft, including a Boeing 727 that's been nicknamed the Lolita Express. The logs show trips to the island, to Paris, to London, to Tangier, and they show passengers. Names that make headlines when they're finally made public. Lawyers fight for years to keep these documents sealed. Motions are filed arguing that releasing the information would violate privacy rights, that it would cause irreparable harm, that the public has no right to know. But judges begin to disagree. Slowly, painfully, the seals are broken. What do you think about how this case was handled in 2008? Does this represent justice? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The victims who dared to speak. The women who survived Jeffrey Epstein's abuse face an impossible choice. stay silent and try to move forward with their lives, or speak publicly and risk being destroyed by powerful legal teams and public scrutiny. Many choose silence. The trauma is too deep. The fear is too real. But some choose differently. Virginia Roberts Jeffrey becomes the most prominent voice. She's recruited at age 16 while working at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach. She's approached by Ghislaine Maxwell, who tells her about an opportunity to make money by training as a massage therapist for a wealthy man. What follows changes her life forever. In her testimony, Jeffrey describes years of abuse. She's flown around the world. She's told she must do whatever Epstein and his associates want. She describes being loaned out to powerful men, being photographed with them, being used as a commodity. When she finally escapes, she flees to Australia, marries, and tries to build a new life. For years, she remains silent. But the memories don't fade. The nightmares don't stop. In 2015, she decides to fight back. She files a defamation lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell, who has publicly called her a liar. The lawsuit becomes a vehicle for revealing the truth. Her deposition is explosive. She names names. She describes locations. She provides details that can be corroborated. Her testimony is consistent across multiple interviews spanning years. Experts who analyze her statements find none of the markers typically associated with fabricated accounts. Other victims begin to come forward. Courtney Wild, who was recruited at age 14 in Palm Beach. She describes being paid $300 for what was supposed to be a massage. She describes abuse that escalated over time. And she describes being asked to bring other girls, being told she could make an additional $300 for each friend she recruited. This is a key element of Epstein's methodology. He turns victims into recruiters. He implicates them in the system. This creates shame and silence. How can you report abuse when you brought your best friend into the situation? The guilt becomes another tool of control. Michelle Licata, Annie Farmer, Maria Farmer, Sarah Ransom. One by one, women step forward. Each story is unique, but patterns emerge. The recruitment, the grooming, the escalation, the threats, the payments that feel like complicity, but are actually just another form of exploitation. These women face brutal attacks. Defense attorneys suggest they're motivated by money. Media outlets question their credibility. Online commenters are vicious, but they persist. They testify in court. They speak to journalists. They refuse to be silenced anymore. The legal battle over the 2008 plea agreement continues. Bradley Edwards and Paul Castle argue that the agreement violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act. The case winds through the court system. In 2019, a federal judge agrees. Judge Kenneth Marr rules that prosecutors violated the law by not conferring with victims before signing the agreement. It's a moral victory, but offers little practical relief. The plea agreement stands. Epstein has already served his time. The immunity granted to co-conspirators cannot be undone. The judge's ruling confirms what the victims always knew. They were treated as irrelevant to their own case. But something else is happening. Investigative journalists are digging deeper. Julie K. Brown of the Miami Herald publishes a groundbreaking series called Perversion of Justice. She tracks down victims who had never spoken publicly. She obtains documents. She interviews prosecutors and police officers who are still troubled by how the case was handled. Her series reignites public outrage. It reaches members of Congress. Questions are asked about Alexander Acosta, who by now is serving as Secretary of Labor in the Trump administration. How could a man who gave Epstein such a lenient deal be entrusted with protecting American workers? The pressure builds. In July 2019, federal prosecutors in New York take action. They arrest Jeffrey Epstein at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey as he returns from Paris on his private jet. He's charged with sex trafficking of minors and conspiracy. This time, the charges are federal. This time, there will be no lenient plea deal. This time, the evidence includes materials seized from his Manhattan mansion. Hundreds of photographs of nude and partially nude young women. Computer records. Physical evidence that corroborates victim testimony. Epstein is denied bail. He's held at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan, a federal detention facility known for housing high-profile defendants. Finally, it seems, justice will be served. The victims who fought for years feel a sense of vindication. This is what should have happened in 2008. This is what they deserved all along. They prepare to testify. They prepare to face him in court. They prepare to finally be heard. Thank you so much for staying with us until this point. Your attention to this important story matters. The most shocking revelations are still ahead. The network of protection and silence. The question that haunts this case is not just what Jeffrey Epstein did, but how he got away with it for so long. The answer lies in the network of protection that surrounded him, a network built on wealth, power, connections, and the willingness of institutions to look the other way. The flight logs become one of the most scrutinized pieces of evidence. Epstein's jets carried passengers across the world. The logs show trips to his island, to his New Mexico ranch, to Paris, London, and beyond. And they show who traveled with him. Names in these logs include former President Bill Clinton. The logs show Clinton on multiple flights, though his representatives state he never visited the island and was unaware of Epstein's crimes. They include Prince Andrew, Duke of York, son of Queen Elizabeth. Photographs show him with Virginia Giuffre at Ghislaine Maxwell's London home. He will later claim in a disastrous BBC interview that he couldn't have been with Giuffre on the night she describes because he was at a Pizza Express in Woking. The interview becomes infamous for his apparent lack of empathy for Epstein's victims. The logs include prominent scientists, academics, and business leaders. Many will later claim they had no knowledge of Epstein's criminal activities. They thought he was simply a wealthy philanthropist interested in science and ideas. But questions linger. How could so many intelligent people spend time with Epstein and never notice anything wrong? The relationship between Epstein and Leslie Wexner is particularly puzzling. Wexner is worth billions. He built a retail empire, yet he gives Epstein power of attorney. He allows Epstein to manage his money, his properties, his affairs. The Manhattan mansion that becomes synonymous with Epstein's crimes? It originally belonged to Wexner. He transferred it to Epstein for a reported purchase price that seems below market value. In 2019, after Epstein's arrest, Wexner releases a letter claiming he was unaware of Epstein's crimes and that Epstein had misappropriated vast sums of his money. But questions remain. How could such a sophisticated businessman be deceived for so long? Why didn't he conduct due diligence? Why did he give so much power to someone with so little documented expertise? Then there's the question of Ghislaine Maxwell's role. She's described by victim after victim as essential to Epstein's operation. She recruited girls. She participated in abuse. She threatened victims who wanted to leave. Yet for years after Epstein's 2008 conviction, she moves freely in elite social circles. She attends events. She's photographed at a party for a magazine. She seems untouchable. The legal system also failed repeatedly. Beyond the 2008 plea deal, there are other troubling decisions. In New York, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office declines to bring charges in 2005 despite having evidence. In New Mexico, where Epstein owns a Zorro Ranch, locals report seeing young women at the property, but no investigation is launched until years later. Educational institutions that accepted Epstein's money face scrutiny. Harvard received donations despite Epstein having no degree and no apparent connection to university beyond wanting to associate with brilliant minds. MIT received donations. Even after his 2008 conviction, some institutions continued accepting his money. The allure of funding apparently outweighed moral concerns. Financial institutions also played a role. J.P. Morgan Chase maintained banking relationships with Epstein for years. Internal documents later revealed that compliance officers raised concerns about unusual transaction patterns, large cash withdrawals, payments to women who appeared to be victims, yet the accounts remained open. In 2023, J.P. Morgan will pay $290 million to settle a lawsuit brought by Epstein's victims. Deutsche Bank also maintained a relationship with Epstein, opening accounts for him even after other banks had cut ties. They too will pay settlements to victims. The protection Epstein enjoyed went beyond institutions. It included individual enablers, lawyers who crafted non-disclosure agreements, accountants who managed offshore accounts, pilots who flew the planes without asking questions, employees at his properties who saw young girls and said nothing. Some enablers faced pressure and threats. Maria Farmer, an artist who worked for Epstein, claims that when she reported abuse to the FBI and the New York Police Department in the 1990s, nothing was done. She believes powerful forces protected Epstein even then. There are also persistent questions about Epstein's source of wealth. Some investigators believe his money management business was largely a front. They suggest he may have generated income through other means. There's speculation about blackmail, about intelligence connections, about secrets he held over powerful people. Epstein himself encouraged these theories. He hinted at connections to intelligence agencies. He suggested he had information that made him valuable to powerful entities. Whether this was truth or just another manipulation tactic remains unclear. What is clear is that a system of protection surrounded him, a system that relied on silence, money, legal intimidation, and the unwillingness of powerful people to rock the boat. Everyone involved had reasons to stay quiet. Victims were paid or threatened. Associates worried about their own exposure. Institutions feared scandal. And so the abuse continued for decades. The controversial death and the legacy of questions. August 10th, 2019. Metropolitan Correctional Center, Manhattan. At approximately 6:30 in the morning, guards find Jeffrey Epstein dead in his cell. He's been incarcerated for just over a month. His trial on federal sex trafficking charges is scheduled to begin. Victims are prepared to testify. The world is watching. And then, suddenly, he's gone. The official cause of death is suicide by hanging. The New York City Medical Examiner rules it so. But the circumstances surrounding his death raise immediate questions. Questions that persist to this day. Epstein was on suicide watch following an incident 3 weeks earlier when he was found injured in his cell. But he was removed from suicide watch and returned to the special housing unit. He was supposed to have a cellmate. On the night of his death, he was alone. Guards were supposed to check on him every 30 minutes. They didn't. Video cameras were supposed to record the area outside his cell. The footage shows hours of unusable video due to what officials call a malfunction. The Metropolitan Correctional Center is a federal facility that houses high-profile defendants. It's supposed to be secure, monitored. Yet on the night one of the most important witnesses in a case involving powerful people dies, multiple security protocols fail simultaneously. Dr. Michael Baden, a forensic pathologist hired by Epstein's brother, observes the autopsy. He later states that some of Epstein's injuries are more consistent with homicide than suicide, specifically fractures in the neck bones. The medical examiner disputes this interpretation, but Dr. Baden's statements fuel speculation. 2 guards who were supposed to be monitoring Epstein are charged with falsifying records. They allegedly shopped online and slept instead of conducting required checks. They later accept a plea deal that allows them to avoid prison time. Critics argue this is another example of the system failing to hold people accountable in the Epstein case. The questions multiply. How does the most high-profile detainee in federal custody, facing charges involving potentially powerful co-conspirators, die in a federal facility? How do all security measures fail on the same night? Why were warning signs ignored? Theories spread rapidly. Some believe Epstein did indeed take his own life to avoid facing his victims in court and spending the rest of his life in prison. Others believe he was murdered to silence him, to prevent him from revealing names, from exposing the network of powerful people who participated in or enabled his crimes. Attorney General William Barr calls Epstein's death a perfect storm of screw-ups. He orders investigations. The FBI examines the circumstances. But many people remain unconvinced by the official narrative. Polls show a significant percentage of Americans believe Epstein did not kill himself. For the victims, his death represents another injustice. They were promised their day in court. They were promised the opportunity to confront him, to tell their stories in a forum that mattered. His death robs them of that opportunity. In August 2019, a federal judge allows victims to speak at a hearing even though the criminal case is now closed. One after another, women stand and address the court. They describe the impact of the abuse, the years of trauma, the difficulty trusting people, the nightmares, the sense that justice has once again eluded them. Courtney Wild speaks. Virginia Giuffre speaks. More than a dozen women exercise their right to be heard. Their statements are powerful, heartbreaking. They call for the investigation to continue, for co-conspirators to be held accountable, for the full truth to emerge. The investigation does continue, but its focus shifts. If Epstein cannot be prosecuted, those who helped him can be. In July 2020, FBI agents arrest Ghislaine Maxwell at a property in New Hampshire where she's been hiding. She's charged with conspiracy to entice minors to travel to engage in illegal sex acts, transportation of minor with intent to engage in criminal sexual activity, and perjury. Her trial begins in November 2021. It lasts 4 weeks. Victims testify. They identify Maxwell as the woman who recruited them, who participated in abuse, who made them feel safe before betraying that trust. The evidence is overwhelming. In December 2021, a jury finds Ghislaine Maxwell guilty on 5 of 6 counts. In June 2022, she's sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. It's a significant conviction, but for many victims, it's not enough. Maxwell was important, but she wasn't the only one. The network extended beyond her. Documents continue to be unsealed. In 2024, a new batch of documents from the Giuffre defamation case becomes public. Hundreds of pages revealing more names, more details, more evidence of how extensive the operation was. Media outlets comb through the documents. More connections are revealed. More questions are raised. But some questions may never be answered. Who else was involved? How many victims were there total? What happened to the evidence seized from Epstein's properties? The hard drives, the photographs, the videos that reportedly existed. Where is all that material now? The case has changed how society thinks about sexual abuse and power. It's revealed how wealth can buy protection, how institutions fail victims, how silence can be purchased. It sparked conversations about accountability, about believing survivors, about the need for systemic change. Educational institutions have revised policies about accepting donations from controversial figures. Banks have implemented stronger compliance measures. The Crime Victims' Rights Act is enforced more seriously. These are small changes born from enormous pain. For the women who survived Jeffrey Epstein's abuse, the fight continues. Some have received financial compensation from Epstein's estate. A victim compensation fund was established. But money cannot erase trauma. It cannot restore innocence. It cannot undo the years lost to fear and shame. Their courage in speaking out has mattered. It's prevented Epstein's story from being forgotten. It's kept pressure on authorities to continue investigating. It's inspired other survivors of abuse to come forward in different cases. Their voices have created a legacy far more powerful than the silence Epstein tried to buy. The evidence that the public was never meant to see has now been seen. The testimonies that were sealed have been heard. The network of protection has been exposed. What we do with this knowledge is up to us. The Jeffrey Epstein case represents one of the most disturbing failures of justice in modern history. It shows how power, money, and connections can create shields against accountability. It reveals how institutions from law enforcement to education to finance can fail to protect the most vulnerable. And it demonstrates the extraordinary courage required of survivors who choose to speak truth to power. The evidence we've examined today, much of it sealed for years and fought over in courts, tells a story that powerful people hoped would never be fully told. But because of determined journalists, persistent attorneys, and brave survivors, the truth has emerged. Not all of it, perhaps not even most of it, but enough to understand the scale of what happened. Now we want to hear from you. What aspect of this case do you find most troubling? What questions do you still have? How do we prevent something like this from happening again? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters in keeping this conversation alive. If you found this investigation valuable, please subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon to be notified when we release new content. We're committed to bringing you in-depth examinations of stories that matter, stories that reveal uncomfortable truths, stories that demand attention. And don't go anywhere. Our next recommended video examines another case that shook the world and revealed systemic failures that allowed injustice to flourish. Click on it now to continue your journey into stories the powerful hoped you'd never hear. Thank you for watching.